Bloomberg took the market by shock today with this article saying that Meta is planning to build a cloud business to sell AI computing power. Now, a lot of people were acting like this came out of the blue, but if we go through Meta's reports, even back last year, October of last year, they were talking about intentionally overbuilding in case superintelligence came earlier than expected. And if they had excess compute, they would use it for the internal business, the other parts of their business, which already still needed more compute than what they had anyways. Then we get the report actually earlier in April 2026 where they actually talked about being flexible. So they've actually, with their compute and what the possibilities were, and I think a lot of this actually came down to recognizing what SpaceX was doing, because SpaceX has been selling some of their compute out to big customers. Like Anthropic actually uses a lot of the data centers from SpaceX, and the market has been treating SpaceX very favorably, saying this is a huge revenue driver, while SpaceX continues to build out their own development for themselves as well in the long term, right? So then if we distill that into what the market reaction was, the market sold off all the cloud companies dramatically. And it said, oh, this is, the bears were eager to say that this is bad for the cloud, right? This is bad for not only cloud companies and the data centers, but this is bad for the AI story because if there's so much demand, then how can Meta say demand? And it's another example of the market having the shortest term memory that you could possibly imagine. Silly retail investors get caught up in these headlines because literally, 3 days ago, Google literally limited Meta's use of the Gemini AI because Meta was seeking more computing capacity than Google could provide. And 3 days later, we're supposed to believe that Meta's already, has too much compute now, and they're going to start selling it. And keep in mind, Meta has a huge deal with Nimbus that starts in 2027. A $12 billion deal that starts in 2027. We have not seen any reports of them canceling that. The demand is still there. In fact, Meta can't even get the demand they want. This all feels like Fugazi. It feels like noise. It feels like a PR play. Zuckerberg loves that. He's the king of copy. He's the king of copy. And he's being a smart CEO. But everyone getting baited by this, I think, is being so infinitely silly. Because this guy is saying, oh, the market was rewarding SpaceX for selling. They're going to sell excess compute. And the market's mad at me because I'm spending so much on all this compute. I'll just tell the market, hey, there's excess compute. We'll sell it and we'll create a huge, developer infrastructure too, where they can use our models and the compute together and it'll be like a package deal, and which is similar to what AWS does, and the market loved it. Meta rallied 8% in the pre-market on that, right? But all he's going to do is turn around, use that rally, use that money coming in to spend infinitely more on compute, which is bullish for NVIDIA and stuff, because all these companies are doing is looking for quick money grabs so they can continue to spend on CapEx. Okay? Everyone thinks this is so bearish. Not at all. This is so bullish. These guys are desperate to get more compute. They're desperate to spend more money. It's clear as day. Meta probably will sell some to put some numbers on the board, and that money is going to go in one hand, out the other hand. And when Nimbus comes up, then maybe Meta could expand that business a little bit and actually use those services. I'll get worried if they break this contract and pay out Nimbus for the breaking of this contract, and this stock could then collapse. But the smartest people in the space were not sellers today. Just looking at flows, which tells me overall bullish. If we also take a look at memory, which has been taking a huge beating, a lot of this beating is from the kind of the mini implosion in Korean markets. But people are thinking that maybe the DRAM story is over. I actually don't see any And you have that, this trend line still holding. This actually looks like a pretty good bounce area for this before we get a continuation. And I mean, after that last MU earnings, you know, it's got a decent drawdown here. We actually do have a somewhat significant break from the stock. Maybe we come down to 900, but I'm actually a buyer down here. I actually think that this story has a lot more to it. This company's growing as fast as NVIDIA. Faster than NVIDIA before NVIDIA started its parabolic run. This is probably a $3 trillion company that right now I believe sits, just at $1 trillion. Maybe a bit less than that after the sell today. Maybe a more round trillion, but it looks phenomenal. Sorry for sneezing. That probably sounded awful in the mic. I should have turned my head more. In other news, we see Bitcoin here not breaking down even after breaking this major multi-year trend line. And this is starting to look like a story that's becoming healthy for, signs of liquidity, kind of maybe returning back to the market. Even after that big kind of mixed bag from the market today, where kind of tech kind of sold off, we still saw strong moves from a lot of the market that led us to overall recover from that initial breakdown. We held the key level, the 241. If we look at SPY here, we can see that we're kind of actually setting up this wedge, but we're still looking really bullish. If we zoom out actually to the daily here, we can see that we're about to flip positive on our daily TTM, which we haven't really been positive on this since, we were heading into June. June was bearish throughout. Now we're about to get the flip on the daily here. If this can break through the top of the wedge, I'd look for, everyone selling that was selling in June or nervous. This thing can accelerate. You break over the top of this wedge, I think you're going straight to 800. Straight to 800. And that's my base case, quite honestly. I think that the market looks incredibly strong, and we could see Bitcoin pull a reversal. There's nothing more bullish than a failed breakdown. So if Bitcoin reclaims this trend line, I know it's kind of like dead. No one wants to touch it. Why would you buy crypto when the AI story is so good? Just the sentiment there, like the sentiment when the storyline is that, and I see this thing not fully capitulating and holding, breaking a major key level, no follow through to the downside, that alone makes me kind of excited for upside. Okay, so I know this is dead, and another thing that's dead that's kind of has my attention is bonds here, especially with Warsh saying today that he doesn't think inflation is going to be a long-term issue. TLT got rugged on some of the macro points here, but overall, if we can set another higher low here, this could get interesting. I know that plunge was pretty bad, and it kind of broke the structure here. Like, we had a nice parallel structure, and it's been nuked by this move. But if we can get a reclaim here, I think it's going to be interesting. And short-term rates are also kind of telling us that rate hikes aren't to be feared as well, despite what the market narrative is, which I've seen a lot of headlines say that the market is not pricing in sticky inflation very well. I actually think that is completely wrong. I think the main market narrative is that sticky inflation is a problem, and the fact that it keeps showing up in headlines is the reason why. No one's talking about rate cuts right now, or how much the majority of U.S. Of Americans are not doing so hot right now. They're on the decline. Especially the lower cohort is on a rapid decline, while the rich and the skilled force uses AI to become more productive and more efficient than ever and make more money than ever. That's what's causing this K-shaped economy. Looking across at other names that I like, BKTX getting a bit of a pullback here. Still looks good to me, pulling back to its bullish EMA. A nice reset, gives it more room to breathe to the upside. Microsoft really interesting with a nice recovery today. I think the Microsoft strategy is really interesting because I like the way it reacted on the Meta news, actually, in fact. Because remember, Microsoft's kind of given up on trying to make a top tier model, even though they've invested in a lot of the top tier models, which is another thing to consider when you're thinking about like the Anthropic IPO coming out and stuff. That's huge for Microsoft. They're going to make billions and billions off of that deal because they were a major early investor. It was them and some other, I can't remember who the other company is that has massive investments in Anthropic, but Microsoft is still benefiting from these major AI companies through investments, even though they're not chasing the top model themselves, and then building small efficient agents that exist within their current software products should provide some sort of durability in the software. So I think this company will find a way to survive this just because of who they are and just because of where their money sits. Like, they clearly have an eye on this and they're doing well. It isn't clear to me how that plays out for them. But the other thing is, like, we bought down here just because how do you not buy down here? I mean, look at that support. Unless you think this company's done for, that's a support, a multiple that's lower than it has been in over a decade for a company like Microsoft is kind of just like a buy, just close your eyes and buy type of moment for me. So I'm in swings. Swings are doing well. And I'm looking to push in those, especially if we kind of do a reclaim of 401. I think that's your big test here. We are getting a nice gap fill to through 393 probably early in July, and let's see if that can carry us over the 401, because that would get us over this bearish resistance and see if we can kind of reclaim this trend that failed. And yeah, I think that's all I really want to comment on right now, guys. There's a lot of companies that are getting nice breakouts, like Shop's now getting a pop here. And I think Shop is going to be a winner when it comes to AI. I think the efficiencies in AI will allow Shop to do more for their clients easily, especially for the slow adopters of AI. They'll be able to use AI tools within the Shop software, especially, because people generally are lazy. If people are good with AI, they can do everything Shop does themselves. They could build all the software from scratch, no problem. But I think what will most likely happen in the medium term is that people will use AI tools integrated within the Shop platform to build those sites rather than do it all from scratch themselves. And I think that story is going to be kind of broadly reflected in a lot of different environments. And I do think that is the next phase of the rally, though. We've already seen some signs of it, especially when we look at what did I just do? Especially when we look at insurance companies like Travelers here, and lots of insurance companies are doing phenomenally well. I wanted to try Lemonade here as it comes and tests this breakout. I think this could get some nice follow through on this level here. So I went ahead and took a small position here. It's also got a weekly that's about to fire to the upside. So I think this could have an explosive move. Maybe we come take out 100. That would be really cool to see. But insurance just in general has been like a very quick adopter. It also makes me think if real estate might be next, and maybe open has more potential. This thing's fell off a lot of radars, but we played this earlier. Man, that was mid 2025. That felt like it was a few months ago. Time is flying in these crazy times, but you can see this thing's trying to flip on the weekly, and it's trying to do it in tandem with the daily. So I have no position here, but I do want to put it on everyone's radar because I am watching this. I've been watching it on a weekly basis. I actually should just go ahead and set an alert there, actually, because this looks like it could probably fire within the next, maybe even before even the weekends, this thing will pop. So there's still a lot of interesting things in this market. Now, I tried to dip on NBIS. I kept it small. I almost wanted to try and buy a larger size because honestly, so long as these contracts aren't being pulled back, like we already discussed, like the demand is there. Like these numbers are huge, and when the efficiency starts showing up in these companies, or even just think about it, go look at anyone on X that was being super mega bear the AI stories over because of that Bloomberg report, and then go look, see what they've actually done with AI, because it's nothing. These people are, being a critic is not the same thing as being the creator. And if you don't use these tools, and even more so, if you aren't using these tools to their maximum potential, if you aren't setting up multiple agents and setting up your MCP, and you have no idea, not even the slightest idea of what these things are capable of. Um, Not even to mention that like Fable 5 is back out again. OpenAI has a model coming out, and these top tier companies are even complaining about how fast open source is moving. So, if you get an open source Fable 5, oh my word, we're, we, there's, there's just, in my opinion, plenty of demand for the cloud companies as someone who has paid for a lot of hardware, but still also has to use the cloud, right? Like, there's just no way around it. You just need so much compute to do the things you want to do. So, yeah, that's my thoughts, guys. Still make a bull. You know, I think, last year I was more bullish than all the banks. This year I had a projection more bullish than all the banks, and I think we might even end up being hitting a target above that. So from that 2026 predictions, I am just, yeah, I'm really pumped about what the next few weeks can bring. Even looking at futures here on my other screen, like a amazing recovery of that sell-off of weakness. I think the market's gonna wisen up to how silly it was. Oh, I just mixed those up. I think the market's gonna wisen up to the emotional panic it had today. So we'll find out. Short week, by the way. Remember, tomorrow is our Friday. All right, and usually a day before a holiday is pretty bullish. So let's end the week strong. God bless. See you in the morning.